Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for One Piece Chapter 986. So, right out of the gate, the thing I really appreciate about this chapter more than anything else is that Oda gave moments that would normally go to the Straw Hats, to Luffy and the Straw Hats, and switch them over to largely the Yakuza 9 and Momonosuke. Uh, that being the first two being the walk to battle, and the big bombastic sneak attack on Kaido, which served to show us something we largely as the readers already knew, but definitely takes focus here, which is that if you really look at what this chapter represents, it's basically a culmination of everything that's been built up in this particular article, like always. But the key thing here is Wano arc as a whole has been very unique from other arcs in the sense where it's largely been the story of the samurai. They have been the driving force of everything in Wano, whereas Luffy and the Straw Hats, I find, have oddly taken have largely been shifted to a much smaller supporting role. And while that does sound like, and while in some respects you could say that's very typical story structure for any One Piece arc, the difference here is that in most of those other cases, the story would in some way or another, it would usually pretty much shift focus primarily back to the Straw Hats. But in the case of Wano, it's been largely the opposite. Like, don't get me wrong, the Straw Hats have had their moments have had their moments in this arc, but it's one of those things where no matter what's been going on with Luffy and the Straw Hats, the focus has always shifted back to Kinemon, the Yakuza 9, and just the samurai in general. Like, this is their story, and in the case of this chapter, it's again, it's culminated into this moment, into the very moment they've been waiting for, where they can finally finish what Odin had started, and put an end to pretty much Kaido's tyranny. Like everything that we've built up to at this point has all been leading to this pretty much one payoff for Kinemon, the Yakuza 9, Momonosuke, the Kozuki clan. Like, it all comes together, it all comes to a head here in this chapter. And what served to drive this point is what served to kind of cap off this moment even more is how Oda also gave Momonosuke a Luffy moment by him facing down the prospect of death, and yet despite that, still declaring he will become the Shogun of Wano. Act seeing Momonosuke all beat up, bruised, beaten, and still like hanging on, like being still being tied up in that still being tied up, ready for execution, and still declaring he's become the Shogun of Wano. That was a moment that really gave me the chills. I'm not gonna lie, there's very few moments in the manga that give me chills. Even the most epic of moments, I still feel a little more than for those moments in the anime than they do the manga. But this one moment had me going, oh, like I was literally, okay, Momo, you're definitely a badass. I can definitely appreciate that. And now obviously the question is, do I think that the Yakuza 9 are going to be the forefront people to defeat Kaido? No, I think all signs still point to Luffy being the one to do that. However, again, given the way that Oda has structured this arc where the samurai have taken primary focus, I wouldn't be surprised if he still has a role for them to play in the climax. Like, it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense if at this point it would not make sense for pretty much Luffy to pretty much take sole focus as the one to take on and defeat Kaido. And honestly, if the latest opening has anything to honestly, like, it really could just be like it could have just been a bit of fan service. But if the latest, like, opening of the anime has anything to say, I think we're headed for a situation where basically everyone is gonna be fighting Kaido. Honestly, like it isn't just gonna be Luffy alone. It's gonna be like Luffy, the Straw Hats, the Yakuza 9. Like I think everyone is gonna be taking on Kaido at this point. So yeah, I think we're headed for something big in this climax. Honestly, and like I said, yeah, it was just it's just one of those things where in as a whole I really appreciate it's one of those things where a lot of what I just said is probably like the most common thing. Like what I think we all knew this, but it's in this chapter that I really found myself appreciating the fact that the Straw Hats almost kind of took a back seat to basically everyone else in this arc. Like I feel that the samurai I feel much more compelling. The samurai had the much more compelling story in this arc, honestly, and it is just as the samurai Odin Wano just the amount of world building we've gotten in this arc. It's just been it's one of those where I kind of appreciate the fact that the Strats just kind of took a bit of a slight more of a back seat compared to everything else, honestly. Um, so one of the other big things with this chapter is obviously that the Yakuza and Aang appearing before Kaido, it also takes the time to show us that Kanjuro and his men were defeated. And with Kaido's whole speech about forcing the samurai of Wano to choose allegiances, it feels like even more now than ever like Oda is pushing for Kanjuro into that position of taking revenge for Orochi, which on the note of Orochi's death, even though I knew he wouldn't survive, I kind of held out this weird hope that in terms of this week's chapter, we'd actually see Orochi survive because Orochi, just on the mere fact that Orochi had the just because Orochi had the devil fruit, he did. Like he might have survived his decapitation, but I guess that would have only made sense if he was actually transformed. And honestly, like I in and that in itself, kind of the fact that Orochi didn't survive decapitation, in a weird sense, that does kind of show a little bit of poetic irony since Orochi had the power of the Hydra and yet he still died from decapitation. There's just a bit of a severe irony there, honestly. Um, of course, the underlying problem that our heroes face right now is, again, going back to what I said about Kaido, he basically gave the Samurai of Wano an ultimatum. And the fact that they all willingly pledged their allegiance to him pretty much says that our heroes might have largely missed their window to curry favor with the samurai who served under Orochi, which with how quickly they switched loyalties. But the thing is, even though they've sworn their allegiances, there is still a window open here, as I imagine many of them as we see, many of them seem to have sworn allegiance out of fear. So now everything really does hinge on Kaido being defeated. Yet, despite that, even if they do end up defeating Kaido, they are still the samurai and the Oniwabanshu. They're still going to need a reason to follow the Kozuki clan again once this is all said and done, because largely from what we've seen, these factions seem to largely like respond to the strength of the person, and Kaido even though Orochi's strength largely depended on Kaido, he did in some ways have the ingenuity that they liked, which is why they got behind him. So now Momo he really needs to step up and show his strength to them after all this is said and done. And because the other thing to note in this chapter is that there's more than a couple times where Kaido honestly he looked shocked or just taken off guard, which proved that even if he isn't going to be defeated so easily, there is an aspect to everything that's happening in this chapter where he's starting to fear the prospect of defeat, and it could be something, that's just it could be just the moment of adrenaline and just in the moment that he's scared that they managed to sneak up on him. But if if what we see of Kaido in this chapter is true, then this could be this could be an exploitable weakness going forward. Like Kaido, I think is going to be on a much more of a on have much more of a reckless sort of not thinking things through, like not thinking things straight kind of reaction to all this. So I think in all the I think in all the confusion and all of the and just all the reckless actions he's going to take, I think that will open up an opportunity to defeat him, honestly. Because we have to remember, Kaido has been defeated in the past. It's just that Kaido has been like more or less captured and taken off guard and whatnot. He just hasn't, I don't think, necessarily been properly defeated before. And so now one thing I'm kind of iffy on with this chapter is that while I'm sure Oda was just setting them up to do some well, I'm sure Oda was just setting them up to do something in later chapters. Was I the only one who thought Luffy and Yamato were kind of largely pointless in this chapter? I mean, don't get me wrong. The only purpose they had was to get the cuffs off Yamato, and that was it. Like they largely kind of felt inconsequential and didn't serve a purpose in this like particular chapter. But I mean, to be fair on that front, the fact that Luffy had presumably removed them the way I think he did shows that he's gained much more mastery with his haki thanks to his training with Hyogoro. But like aside from that one moment, it felt like Luffy and Yamato were just kind of largely fell to the wayside. But again, I want to preface it by saying I'm sure Oda's got bigger plans for them now that Yamato's free. But yeah, there's not more I can say other than they were the most underwhelming part of this chapter. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Lister Control. That night of me, signing off. Later, guys.